I know we're altering this barren scheme.
You have no idea what he's done.
The line between light and dark is so very thin.
Bungie is really good at marketing their game. Every major release, every expansion, they all have banger trailers, exciting behind-the-scenes marketing videos, and incredible visuals. They are as famous for hyping up their games as they are for not delivering on that hype. It's nearly always the case of the trailer is better than the movie. An issue that has persisted since day one of Destiny 1's launch, and the Edge of Fate really solidifies this as my biggest problem with the franchise as a whole. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about where things have gone wrong. Welcome back for seconds to a game that's been there through the ups and downs with me over the past 11 years. I want to preface this by saying Destiny and Destiny 2 are some of my favorite games of all time, and some of my most played games of all time, with World of Warcraft being a pretty close second. But, having said that, one thing has always pissed me off about the game and the franchise in general. But before we get into what that is, a word from our sponsor. This is a man with no direction. He wears clothes that are too small.
Too small. His jacket is so tiny.
He goes for walks, but doesn't know why.
Walks. Why are you walking?
He wears cologne designed just for him.
Just for him.
He's bad with women.
Such an idiot.
For the man that has no idea. Clueless by Clueless. When I say Destiny is my favorite franchise, it's not hyperbole. I have over 1,000 hours in Destiny 1 and over 3,100 hours played in Destiny 2. I've completed every single raid, minus the final boss of Salvation's Edge, but that's an ongoing effort, and acquired 25 titles, yada yada, etc, etc. Point being, I have some history. So what's my beef? Well, with the release of Edge of Fate, Bungie is trying to set up the next saga for Destiny. The final shape is a really tough act to follow. It was the culmination of 10 years of storytelling, albeit disjointed storytelling, and the epic conclusion of the Light and Dark saga. Honestly, even with the issues I have with the final shape, it really was a truly memorable and well-executed send-off. But Bungie being Bungie, they never fail to deliver the same problems, with a new coat of paint. Earlier when I said the trailer is better than the movie, I'm not just referring to current Destiny expansions. In 2013 at E3, Bungie did a behind-the-scenes, behind-closed-doors showcase of Destiny 1. And the video has since leaked, and just listen to how they describe the Cosmodrome, a location in Destiny 1 and Destiny 2 that we've been to a million times.
I'm gonna walk this way for a minute and show you what's behind Old Russia. A place that I like to call Older Russia. So all of this is playable space that we hope to one day get to send you to. You sure about that? It is all real geometry. You could go there. We could go there right now, but you sure about that?
The crux of my problem with the entire franchise is that Bungie sold the game as an MMO, with the shooter mechanics and story of Halo combined with the epic exploration and expansive world of World of Warcraft. Or at least that's how I interpreted much of their marketing and the language they were using to talk about it. But what we got was anything but that. Destiny 1 was a game with very little to actually do. The open world part of Destiny felt like biggish sections just stitched together with tunnels or stretches of nothing between them. The skyboxes always alluded to a world out there that you could explore, but you were never allowed to. Out there in the wild is a phrase uttered by Bungie themselves. That language paints a vivid picture in my mind of a vast wilderness to explore and discover.
Why is the city breathing down my neck?
Why don't you put that down so we can talk?
Out here in the wild, this is how we talk.
The destinations in Destiny are beautiful, for sure, but they all follow the same format. Basically a big donut shape that is impossible to get lost and really isn't an open world at all. The view from the tower in D1 was just begging you to go and drop down into the last city and explore all the nooks and crannies, but again, we never got to do that. The closest we got to that was during the Red War campaign in vanilla Destiny 2, a campaign that we can no longer play thanks to the Destiny content vault and an ongoing lawsuit around the Red War story. Those missions in the city were great, but they were all very curated linear experiences. We also have a couple Crucible maps like Midtown that's set in the city, but that's about it. There's not much there. 11 years of seeing the same view over and over again and never being able to explore, in a game that is supposedly an open world game. Okay, so Destiny 1 maybe didn't have the open world part quite figured out then. It must have had a super memorable story with great characters and oh, what's that? No? It didn't have that either? Well, shit.
Why have you been watching us?
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
Destiny 1's story has been dragged on for years and years, and there isn't much more I can add to that pile other than to say, I didn't hate it, but there also wasn't much there. The bones of the game shone through, even with the 11th hour reshuffle of the campaign that happened. The one saving grace, aside from its gameplay, was the Vault of Glass. While MMOs have had raids for a long time, Destiny raids were very different feeling. The pace, the viewpoint, the kinetics of it all, it was a real rush. It's safe to say that without Vault of Glass, Destiny 1 would have been dead in the water. But how much more epic of an experience would Vault of Glass have been if it had been discovered by the player base on the vast world of Venus instead of just being a marker on the map that you loaded into? The Vault of Glass raid and subsequent raids in Destiny 1 were really the high points of the game, and I think that's been true of all the expansions. The addition of dungeons took some of the pressure off the raids, but it's the raids that are the true unique part of the franchise. I believe this is one of the reasons why Destiny has never attempted to go full MMO and really deliver a large place to explore. I'm fully aware of the technical limitations of when this was released. PS3 and Xbox 360 were pretty old at the time. But let's take old Russia for example. It's basically a few buildings, some small open spaces, and a small part of a very, very large wall. All the destinations hint at so much more, but we never get to explore any of it. I mean, not really. The very beginning of Destiny 1, when you're first awakened by your ghost, has you sitting outside this massive, massive wall that stretches on for miles and miles and miles. You look around and the landscape just goes on, and it really gives you a sense of scale and makes you feel like just a lot of stuff out there. The reality is, it's just a nice skybox.
So all of this is playable space.
And seeing as Destiny launched with these very small locations, it was clear that they weren't going to do that vast, expansive wilderness out of the gate. I had always assumed that Bungie would continue to add large chunks of playable space to the maps to serve as like side quests in the game. But nope, wrong again. The only time that they did add a location to an existing map was in Rise of Iron with the Plague Lands. It was an extension of the Cosmodrome that you had to access through a hole in the wall in the Rocket Yards. But it wasn't actually part of the Cosmodrome, it was its own instance of a location. So they were still two separate locations. Again, a missed opportunity. The social space of that expansion was on a mountain that overlooked the Cosmodrome. And how awesome would it have been to have players discover that by climbing the mountain? And we sort of do that, but it's another mission we just load into and we're already most of the way up the mountain. Bungie talks, or at least they used to talk, about players making their own story, and the tagline "Become Legend" fits so well with the concept of adventuring in the wild and finding stories, aka quests and missions to do. The game tries to straddle the line between MMO freedom and highly curated linear design of Halo and Call of Duty, and the idea of player-driven storytelling really isn't a thing. There's definitely player-driven experiences and stories that come from that, but that's something different entirely, and those come mainly from the raids. I think everyone would more or less agree that the storytelling in the game has gotten significantly better over time, and we now have very fleshed out character backstories for most of the Vanguard leaders, some of the Awoken, some of our enemies, but just when things are going in the right direction, we get something like Lightfall and it's back to square one all over again. I think the community confuses good storytelling with emotional attachment and nostalgia. We've been seeing these same characters for so long that just getting some backstory on them feels so amazing, as if Bungie suddenly hired the best writers and none of their bad habits are present. I mean, if you're starving and someone offers you the worst burger ever made, you're still going to eat it, but let's not forget, you were starving. So anything is going to taste good at that point. Destiny's character stories are pretty okay, even good sometimes, sprinkled in with some really cool lore, but lore and world building are not storytelling. And nowhere is this more evident than the newest expansion, The Edge of Fate. Again, we are whisked off to a new planet, all in a cutscene, no player discovery and no player agency. We're tasked with saving/helping a race of people we just met, amongst a ton of voiceover and dialogue that is consistently stressing the urgency of everything. The problem is, I could not care less. But I really did want to care. We are introduced to Lodi, a new character pulled out of time. His backstory is shown for about 2 seconds and then boom, here he is in the present. A person from the 1960s pulled into a world with super beings that can't die. I could not believe how poorly they handled his introduction. He's only been here for a few weeks, according to him, and it's like he's lived there for years and years. No questions about Guardians or the Traveler or anything really. Talking to a fallen Archon like it's just another Tuesday. He does ask some questions as you're going through the campaign, but he doesn't ask much, and he seems kind of uninterested and very unaffected by the whole situation. Very matter of fact. His character is just overall boring, and honestly kind of pointless. If you had removed him from the story and removed that aspect from the story, not much would have changed. I assume they're going to do something more with him in the future, but right now he's just kind of a wet sandwich of a character. The cutscene showing his journey through time is so intriguing, but like most things in Destiny, it's never expanded upon. The coolest part is his brief experience of the collapse, and we see that for about 2 to 3 seconds, and then it's over. But again, that's just a big slice of lore pie. As a side note, a person witnessing all that cosmic horror and what it does to them would be an amazing thread for the story to follow. But Lodi is, for the most part, a completely pointless character, aside from his one big moment at the end of the campaign, which amounts to little more than being turned into a human telephone for us to hear the Nine's cryptic dialogue. Honestly, get rid of him completely, use the time you saved from having to introduce him, and give us a real backstory on Ikora. You know, the character we've been talking to for 11 years. I would love to know the decision-making process behind making the cutscenes that go into Destiny 2. Because Ikora's backstory, like, what the hell was that? We got to see her for 1-2 seconds in an office. She's got a kid, maybe, and she knows Lodi because they work in the same building. Okay, why does any of that matter? Why does her backstory or who she was before she was a Guardian even matter? There's no context at all. Like, it doesn't matter for the story being told in the expansion, and it doesn't matter for her backstory. There's nothing there. It's a nothing burger. Whereas with Zavala, we got almost an entire season of him dealing with his history and his backstory. You know, we got to see his wife and kid, and we got some ink cutscenes, and then there's Forsaken with Cade, and we got a ton of info about him. And we even get some info about his backstory before the collapse, but like just hints of it. But we actually get character development of his past, or from his past. Whereas Ikora is still this kind of just black box, just there's nothing there. Aside from her just angrily yelling her dialogue throughout this whole campaign, what's the deal with that? You know who that's like? That's like Osiris in Lightfall, and everybody freaking loved that. Ikora's a badass warlock that kicked serious ass in the Red War, and was the push for us to get revenge for Cade in Forsaken, and was the one pushing for answers during the Witch Queen. And this is the weak backstory we get? Zavala's backstory was told better through Season of the Haunted in some ink animations. Like, give me those any day of the week. Don't get me wrong, I get it. I know why they have to introduce new characters to keep the overall narrative fresh. This whole expansion just has bad plotting, just through and through. And the writing is not much better. I know people, certain people have been praising this expansion for having a great story, but I don't see the same story, or I don't understand what game they're playing. All I see is bad character introductions, overacted, dialogue throughout the whole thing, and a whole lot of filler, especially with how the gameplay breaks down. Like, this is not at all what the Metroidvania genre is about. This is like the most lukewarm version of that you could possibly get. There isn't a lot of player agency with how the story is told. And Bungie does this all the time. There's always a cutscene that whisks you away somewhere and then just drops you on the planet. And that just bothers the hell out of me. Like, at least give us an introduction mission of some kind to set things up. And like, they've done it before. The Taken King had an awesome mission. There's a distress call from Phobos. You go and investigate and find all these Cabal dying and being taken. And then Oryx kind of shows up in his like phantom form and basically issues a threat and an ultimatum to you. And then you hightail it out of there. And like, that's an awesome setup. So you don't immediately run to the Dreadnought and try and start the story. There's some kind of build up. There's kind of a lead into it. And they've just abandoned that entirely. Like, I don't know what, maybe it's a production issue. They just don't have enough time and money to do it. The way that they're telling the story now in side quests and side content is really boring and super lame. RPGs have been able to get away with this for years and years, just using the pop-up text box, because there's just so much story content to get through and so much character interaction that, back in the day, voicing all that stuff would have been just cost prohibitive. But there isn't a lot of NPC interaction in this expansion. It might be some of the least that they've put out, and yet now we have these silent text boxes that take over the screen and you just kind of read a conversation through. It's just a very odd way of doing it, and it doesn't even follow their own style for how they usually do these things. If you're interacting with a console or a character finishes or holographic exposition dump, then the rest of their text or a summary of their text is in the sidebar. And then, you can read that or you don't need to read it. And then on your way you go. So I don't understand the change here. And it's not for the better.
Based on the story and the campaign, what would I rate that story? I would rate it somewhere between an 8.5 and a 9.5.
At this point, I think the storytelling is just bad. I'm sorry, Bife, but you're just wrong on this one. Maybe okay by Bungie standards, but pretty shitty by, storytelling standards. So why am I bringing up all this stuff about open worlds and exploration in the first place? Well, the way Edge of Fate was talked about was that exploration was going to be a big part of the focus in this expansion. Woohoo, great!
This whole destination is about exploring a labyrinthian world that took inspirations from things like Dreaming City, exotic missions, dungeons, and it's wrapping it all through a Metroidvania inspired experience. And so at the heart of all of this, at the heart of the Edge of Fate, is a player-driven exploration and discovery of an exotic world with brand new abilities.
They mentioned wanting to dive into the Metroidvania style more with this release, but I must have missed that part with the experience. All I saw was painfully telegraphed moments. Oh, you need to turn into a ball to progress? How do I know? Because there's a Matter Spark pad literally right next to where you need to turn into the ball. Or a Matter Morph pustule right next to where you need to use it. I don't understand why this decision was made. The map is just littered with those glowing Matter Spark pads. Those are the puzzles? What? Indulge me, if you will, as I rewrite and restructure the opening to Edge of Fate. Why not make the first mission about us investigating the anomaly near Kepler? Save that whole opening cutscene for later. Maybe we land, find a bunch of weird dark matter energy surging through the planet. This is the anomaly. We investigate it, and boom, we're enveloped by dark matter. And because of the light in our paracausal nature, it has a strange interaction with us, and suddenly we're able to turn into this ball of dark energy. That makes sense to me. That's a narrative reason for being able to turn into the ball, and a reason to access parts of the map that we wouldn't normally be able to do. Okay, cool. And then maybe we happen upon the satellite from the opening cutscene. It's damaged, but we're pulsing with dark matter energy still, and it reactivates as we close in on it. And then the train comes roaring in front of us and disappears just as quickly, leaving behind a guy. Drumroll. Leaving behind Lodi. A much more kinetic introduction to his character. And then back to Ikora on Earth in the EDZ, where she and some others are investigating an anomaly of their own. And then boom, the train comes. Ikora flies to Kepler, we talk about this new ability, boom boom boom, we're off to the races. She says something like, well, what if there are other abilities from this dark matter, blah blah blah. And there you go, a simple way to introduce more powers narratively and set up the environmental puzzles later that will make you think, oh, I can't get to that now, but maybe when I have X ability, I'll be able to get there. Like how a Metroidvania game works. Is this a perfect rework? No, of course not. But it's a hell of a lot better than the nothing that is in the game right now. You basically show up, and you see a glowy thing, and you press square, and boom, you have the ability, and you just go and use it. There's no real explanation in-game or in the main plotline for why we can do this.
It appears you've managed to somehow fuse with dark matter.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Honestly, why even bother having the ball ability if it just boils down to press button, go into pipe, press button again? The same thing could have been accomplished with just crouching into a tight space. This expansion is a mess. I was also sure I must have missed a big cutscene reveal or a major scene when Maya Sundaresh shows up, but nope. She's just there all of a sudden in one mission, no build up, no context, and then what she does in the ending scene is so epic, but we still get no context. She makes mention of 3 not being able to break the rules for her, but what the hell is she even talking about? I played the Echoes episode, listened to all the dialogue, did the encore mission a bunch of times for the exotics, and knew what she was doing in the VexNet, and I still had no fucking idea why she was in this expansion. Bife, God bless you, man, but why the heck am I needing to go watch one of your videos to understand the context of it all, within the main plotline? I could understand if this was a side mission or something, but this is the main story thread. Bungie does this time and time again. They just leave out big bits of story that they're like, oh, well, there's lore for that. The players will discover it on their own. No, tell a complete story. Lore is meant to supplement, world build, add flavor to characters, add more personality to characters. It's not a substitute for storytelling. This one just pissed me off playing it. The 9 are such a cool concept, beings of higher dimensions that are tied to the gravity wells of our planetary bodies. They almost have nothing to do with this expansion though, outside of a few cryptic messages when they take over your screen and talk in that classic Bungie metaphor and allegory. The best story Bungie has ever told, front to back, is the Red War. A very clear and concise plotline. It really is their best in-game story, period. They tell you what you need to know, your goal is clear, the antagonist is clear. Ironically, when the main plotline is clear and concise, Bungie drops the ball hard on the lore and world building. I guess they can't do both at once. I think what I really want from Destiny is I want the scale of something like Breath of the Wild, and the ability to go and explore and create your own kind of stories from that, sprinkled with side quests and other characters and interesting people you can meet and all that with the gameplay of Destiny. And I think that's attainable. I think they could do that, but I don't think they can do that with Destiny 2. at least not anymore. I think also one of the main problems with this expansion is they really tried to focus it on the abilities of the destination, and the matter spark ability and the matter morph. But there's really only 2 abilities, and they're not really woven into the structure of the gameplay all that well. And also the ability to turn into a ball of electricity, really not that exciting or enticing in a world where you can summon a giant flaming hammer, or you can go Emperor Palpatine with your electricity fingers, or a golden gun, or where we have Strand and Stasis. Like, we already have these incredible tools available to us. Like, this ball of energy is really not that interesting. It's just a boring idea. I don't know who at Bungie thought this was a cool plan, but man, it sure as hell did not work for me. I think at this point I just want a different game, and I don't think Bungie or the franchise is gonna ever be able to deliver what I want. I still really love Destiny, but this storyline, the structure of the campaign, it really turned me off. And I'm not the only one with this feeling. Am I going to keep playing? Of course I am. I'm a lifer. But am I going to put the same enthusiasm in as I did before? No, I don't think so. I suspect a lot of my criticisms of how the game feels and how the story is put together is also a result of the turmoil at Bungie and the steadily shrinking team that's working on the game. But wow, 11 years. 11 years of potential. The fatigue has set in amongst the players. Everyone can feel it. Edge of Fate might just be the best excuse to do a Destiny 3. Keep the Fate saga, but just start fresh. A new beginning. Thanks for sticking it out as I ranted on this game that I love. I'm just sad it's no longer the hobby I looked forward to playing, and a game that I'm really excited to come back to. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, give us a thumbs up, as it does really help us out, and we're a tiny channel. And if you think we're worth it, subscribe to the channel for more videos. Alright, we'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.